For thought. Stay tuned. My name is Josey Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter from Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Today, we turn to the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, where the country's vast mineral wealth remains both a blessing and a curse. The DRC has filed lawsuits in France and Belgium against tech giant Apple, accusing it of profiting from minerals sourced from illegal, conflict-ridden mines. These conflict minerals, tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold, power our devices, but also fund armed groups responsible for violence and human rights abuses. So, is Apple truly complicit, or does this reflect the complexity of global supply chains? And what does this really mean for corporate accountability in an era of ethical sourcing? Well, joining me for this discussion is Alex Vines, a leading expert on African peace and security from Chatham House, along with our correspondent in Kigali, Rwanda, Alex Ngarambe. Thank you so much, Alex Vines and Alex Ngarambe, for joining us here today on DW Africa Link podcast. So I'll start with you, Alex Vines. I know that you've been following this story closely. How the extraction and trade of tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold have historically fueled violence and armed conflicts in countries such as the DRC.
Well, you mentioned what it is called the 3TG. The only place where these things come together is the Democratic Republic of Congo, and particularly in Eastern Congo. Eastern Congo produces 69% of tantalum in the world, so it's an incredibly important mineral location for global supply chains. And unfortunately, this is a part of the world that has over 100 armed groups operating in them. And so some of these armed groups have tried to control the mining that happens, the artisanal mining that happens in the districts of Eastern Congo. And some of the other armed groups out of the 100 don't necessarily control the mining itself, but will have roadblocks and will look to try and extract rent or get protection payments for the exporting of these minerals through to neighboring countries and then out to international markets. So there are direct links and there are indirect ones. It's been a problem for many, many years. I myself investigated when I was working for Human Rights Watch in 2005, gold production from Ituri district from a big mine called Mongwalu, and produced a 159-page report with colleagues called The Curse of Gold. And we found that gold was being managed by armed groups. It would then get to Uganda. it would then be resold as Ugandan gold and would enter up into the international supply chains, ending up in Dubai, and at that time in Switzerland. One interesting market at that particular time was not for smartphones. It was actually for gold teeth, can you imagine? So there was a Swiss company called Metalor that was buying up the gold, and it was entering into dentistry. So you potentially had a scenario of conflict gold teeth. That didn't in the end happen. Metalor stopped buying the gold. The Swiss authorities were very helpful in their kind of working with us. But the reality is that then more of the gold went to a place called the United Arab Emirates. And that remains consistent to this very day, that the UAE is a important destination of the gold that is originating out of Eastern Congo, that goes through Uganda, but also Rwanda.
Not just Eastern Congo, Rwanda, Alex Vines. We also saw the gold mafia documentary, even out of Zimbabwe. I mean, I think it's a lot of countries that the UAE is benefiting gold from in Africa. And these cases reveal a troubling pattern across Africa, Alex. I mean, vast mineral wealth enriching corporations and fueling conflicts rather than benefiting local communities. It's really a sad situation. But let's talk about the broader implications of conflict minerals on regional stability and governance.
How to certify that a particular mineral is conflict free is a really difficult process, and that requires sometimes independent auditors. But the court case that's being brought against Apple is about that Apple itself says it's not mining the minerals or buying them directly itself, but it has been obtaining minerals from Congo through validated, awarded suppliers. And so, the question still is, how do you really validate that that there isn't some conflict aspect to them? So this is really complicated to do. I mean, I've been a former UN investigator, and I've seen just how difficult it is when looking at supply chains in this regard. There are some, international principles of how to operate, but these are guiding principles. They're not mandatory, and host governments often are more looking at the profits that they can get out of these things than necessarily the full implementation of international best practices.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's a very saddening situation. Now, Alex Ngarambe, you are a reporter and you've been following this story as well and reporting on this, the extent to which the illegal mining trade affects or involves neighboring countries such as yours, Rwanda. Let's talk about also that and the role of cross-border smuggling networks in the perpetuation of the trade of conflict minerals.
Yes, thank you, Josey. Yes, it is very true that Rwanda and many neighboring countries, like Vines was talking about Uganda, have been sucked and drawn into this debate about exploiting minerals in conflict areas in DRC, especially Eastern DRC. Being neighbors and being that there is a war in Eastern DRC, and both countries, let's say Rwanda and Uganda, are also involved in these wars for the last 30 years. And to this very day, DRC still accuses Rwanda of involvement in the wars, especially backing the M23 rebel movement. This debate will not go away anytime soon. So Rwanda has worked so hard to try and clean this image, try to come out and say they export their own minerals, they have enough treaties, especially, they have gold. But again, some sections of the international community say Rwanda's gold deposits are not huge enough to warrant maybe the amount of export revenues from gold.
But yeah, I know you're talking about more of allegations and accusations and what Rwanda is trying to do, clean up its name and all. But I think Alex Vines is going to touch on this because he touched on it a little bit in terms of human rights issues as well. Ngarambe, let's talk about the obstacles Rwanda is encountering in preventing this contamination of its minerals with conflict minerals from the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
I think some of the obstacles that Rwanda faces is the porous borders, because these borders are porous, and if they are porous, we are still going to see so many individuals, so many groups, networks still crossing this border with illegal minerals. So these borders have made it so very difficult to see that there is an end to smuggling of these minerals coming into from DRC, Eastern DRC especially, into Rwanda and subsequently exported to Dubai mainly. This problem persists because there is lack of stability, there is lack of a serious political system that can govern the trading of these minerals.
Alex, would you want to add something on that before we talk about the methods of which maybe governments such as DRC can enhance the regulation of mineral supply chains to mitigate this exploitation by armed groups?
One thing I would like to mention is that UN panels, investigative panels appointed by the UN Security Council, are ones that have been saying that Rwanda has been very involved in profiting from minerals that have come from areas controlled by armed groups in eastern Congo. And there are regular allegations that the M23 armed group, militia group in the DRC is very aligned with Rwanda. That's what the UN panels are saying. That there is one perspective, which is that the re-emergence of M23 as a virulent armed group in eastern Congo a few years ago only occurred after the Congolese government had decided to give the go-ahead for an all-weather good road to go to Kampala, and so that minerals and other trade could go through Uganda. And so if the theory is that actually Rwanda then wanted to disrupt that because economically it would not benefit from trade being diverted, the informal trade that Alex has been talking about, going across the Rwandan border and then kind of being redesignated from Rwanda. And so the renewed M23 crisis emerged for economic reasons, given that in the end, Rwanda is a landlocked, relatively small country with limited economic opportunities. So there's a debate on whether Rwanda is actually interested in the insecurity in eastern Congo, partly for its economic benefit, as well as obviously being concerned for its security. So it's complicated.
But let's talk about as well, Alex Vines. I mean, today I have two Alexes, so I have to say the surname. The efficiency of international initiatives such as the Kimberley process and OECD guidelines in reducing the production of conflict minerals.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was at the beginning of the Kimberley process. I kind of was, again, when I was an activist for Human Rights Watch, I was very involved in the civil documenting the abuses of human rights and the misuse of minerals, or particularly diamonds at the time, from Angola. We, myself, Partnership Africa, Canada, and Global Witness were the three organizations that really pushed for some sort of way to ensure that global supply chains were not contaminated by conflict diamonds as we saw them. So that was diamonds that were being, mined by rebel groups. In that case, it was Sierra Leone and Angola initially. Right. And so Kimberley was born, and the idea was stop rebel groups being able to benefit from making money out of selling diamonds. Because what we'd seen is that rebel groups were moving on to mineral-rich locations like diamond production areas and extracting revenue from them. Kimberley worked for a while, but is struggling now, partly because the definition of conflict was broadened not just from armed non-state actors, rebel groups, but it was moved to define also kind of human rights abuses and bad governance. And that made it a lot more complicated on how to kind of track and deal with that. And of course, it's also more complicated now in that the West has kind of put sanctions onto, diamonds out of Russia, and said that they're conflict diamonds also. And how does that fit for Kimberley process? So you get the politics and the geopolitics still, entering into things that were originally about reassuring the consumer that what they were buying was something that was not linked to conflict. And I mean, obviously, a diamond is a lot more vulnerable, in a sense, to kind of consumer, perception than maybe tantalum is, for example, given the marketing of diamonds being a symbol of love and purity and so on. But, Kimberley was the pioneer of all of this. And as you said, there are OECD guidelines. I've already mentioned Dodd-Frank, and there are all sorts of other initiatives. And they're all about trying to reassure, particularly kind of Western companies and their shareholders that the origins of the minerals are conflict free. But they have all sorts of difficulties that we've already started talking about. It's obviously it's about subsidiaries and who are they. It's about, and a number of these locations are, in difficult locations. So, it's more of a business and human rights issue than a conflict one. But still, that would be, an issue that any major corporate should be concerned about.
Now, just talking of guidelines, still with you, Alex Vines. I mean, when you were talking, I just got a thought to where do blocs like Africa Union, ECOWAS, and all this, what role do they play when we see these regional conflicts happening in terms of human rights, minerals, etc., etc.?
So, issues like initiatives like the UN guiding principles are universal, yes, and African governments sign up to them. African Union obviously has best mining practices. If you read closely Agenda 2063, there's some clear corporate governance vision, ambition in that from the African Union. But the reality, I think, is that it's not going to be regional initiatives that really work here, but going state by state. So the Democratic Republic of the Congo, what it has done is really progressed, for example, on the voluntary principles for business and security. They are now much advanced on that process, and mining companies are, been encouraging the DRC government to follow on this. So I would say all of these things are good. In the end, if the government is able to kind of ensure that corporate actors practice on this and then actually validate that they're being implemented, that is progress. And so the experience that our own research at Chatham House in Mozambique on this regard is that Mozambicans are seeing that there's better practice in some of the bigger Western-orientated mining sites that actually should be nationalized. So what I'm saying is, it should be embedded as best Mozambican practice. And so all companies, Chinese, Indian, and others, should be also following them, because that will be better human rights. It'll be better security protection, and it will protect, from allegations of kind of that these minerals that are mined have any conflict linkage to them.
Right. Now to you, Alex Ngarambe in Rwanda. As you've been reporting, we just want to find out from you also narratives from individuals and communities who have been impacted by illegal mining operations or trapped in the midst of armed conflicts. I know we're talking also of the human cost that underpins the global demand for electronics. We just want to know what is exemplified by these narratives.
Yeah, of course, especially the people who have been trapped in these conflicts and the consequences of these conflicts mainly are Congolese. Many of them have fled their homes. We have like over 100,000 refugees in Rwandan camps, refugee camps, and they have been living in these camps for the last 25 years, let's say, or 30 years, and they have never returned to their countries. And those who remained in Eastern DRC, many of them are in IDPs, internally displaced camps. So there's a lot at stake for these people. They have lost their homes. They have lost their future for the young people who would have grown in their countries. So many of them are here in these refugee camps. Those who were born here, they are now becoming adults. Some of them are adults and having their own children in a refugee camp. They are not sure if they'll ever return to their homeland because they are not even sure if these conflicts will end anytime soon. So, and for the human cost, of course, people have died. This conflict has claimed hundreds of thousands of people in all this period of time. And they do believe these people are in refugee camps to a great extent. They know and they believe for a fact that one of the reasons why they are in these refugee camps, they are IDPs, they are not in their own, they are not living a normal life they would have wanted, is mainly to do with the minerals in their areas where they come from, the Eastern DRC especially, because it is one of the richest provinces in DRC with minerals. So they know that there are so many international players, so many regional players, so many local players who are fueling these conflicts as a result of minerals, so they can benefit, they can profit from these minerals. And they know for a fact that it is not only about the militia groups. Yes, the militia groups are on the ground. They are causing havoc, insecurities, but they also know that these militia groups are sustained and supported by some international organizations, some multinationals, some regional governments, some international governments as well. So they know that...
Yeah, we just hope that things get better. But as we wrap up our discussion with you, Alex Vines, our expert for the day, just want to know the potential impact of this legal action on the global mineral trade and the objectives of the DRC. Also, the potential impact of this case on future discussions regarding corporate accountability in Africa and beyond.
Look, I think any initiative that draws attention to the problems that come out of contested areas where armed groups are operating is important to try and encourage better practice, to try and find solutions, to look at how maybe science and innovation can change. I mean, some minerals may suddenly become less important also over time because of technological innovation. So that, I mean, I don't think that's going to be the case with gold, but we can, for example, see that lithium that lots of people were looking at, and there have been allegations that lithium in the Sahelian region has been kind of developed a conflict-orientated attraction. The collapse of its price has meant it's become less important. So, the market can impact this also. But, it's sad that, you and I having a conversation that feels very much like the one I had in 2005 after the investigation I did on the gold from Ngwalu and how it was entering global supply chains. And next year, there are a number of reports coming out again about gold, and it's still going to the same places, and the same issues are coming up from Eastern Congo. And so it's more about continuity than change, unfortunately, on a commodity like gold.
Alex Vines, who has led the Africa program at Chatham House for years, also an expert on African peace and security, and DW's correspondent in Kigali, Rwanda, Alex Ngarambe. Many thanks for joining us.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
At the Africa Link podcast, we explore how stories and issues across the continent intersect and sometimes may even overlap. The DRC's lawsuit against Apple highlights concerns that echo Sierra Leone's devastating experience with conflict diamonds in the 1990s. During that period, the diamond trade funded armed groups responsible for atrocities undermining the country, while diamonds were mined under brutal conditions. This led to the establishment of the Kimberley process, a global certification scheme to curb the trade in blood diamonds. Yet, despite such efforts, enforcement gaps and loopholes have allowed conflict diamonds to persist. Similarly, the DRC continues to grapple with issues surrounding gold, tungsten, tantalum, and tin minerals that fuel conflict and exploitation. These cases reveal a troubling pattern across Africa: vast mineral wealth enriching corporations and fueling conflicts rather than benefiting local communities. They also underscore the importance and limitations of global efforts to ensure ethical sourcing. That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a part of our community, and your engagement can shape the direction of our discussions. We value your insights and encourage you to share your thoughts with us. Remember to click follow so you can catch all of the Africa Link podcast episodes. This podcast was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. My name is Josey Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until the next one, it's bye for now.
DW News.
This is Mimi Mefone with the DW News. Mozambique's highest electoral body upheld